Zara's life had always been a mixture of hardship and quiet strength. As the eldest daughter of Mr. Amadi, she had grown up under her mother's protective wing, sheltered from the cruelty that would later define her world. Her mother, Ngozi, had been a kind woman, always making sure Zara felt loved and included. Even though she was not Mr. Amadi's biological child, in those early years, life had been hard but manageable. Zara had attended school with her friends, and though they didn't have much, she had felt secure in the love of her mother. But all that changed when her mother fell ill. It had started as a minor sickness, something the village healers assured would pass with time, but it didn't. Within weeks, Ngozi's health had deteriorated rapidly. Before anyone could make sense of it, she was gone. Her death left a gaping hole in Zara's heart, but it also marked the beginning of a much darker chapter in her life. After the funeral, Mr. Amadi's attitude towards Zara shifted dramatically. Where once he had treated her with some semblance of care, he now regarded her with cold indifference. It was as though the death of her mother had wiped away the last of his patience, leaving only bitterness and resentment. "You're not my real daughter," he spat at her one evening, the word searing into her memory. "I only owe you food and shelter, nothing more." From that moment on, Zara's life became one of servitude. She was pulled out of school, forced to abandon her education, and thrust into the role of a caretaker. For her two younger half-sisters, Ebere and Amanda, the once bright and curious child who had excelled in her studies was now reduced to the role of a maid, tending to the needs of her stepfather and his two daughters. Every morning, Zara would rise before dawn, her hands numb from the cold, as she swept the compound and fetched water from the village well. She would then prepare breakfast for her family, serving her sisters and stepfather before allowing herself to eat whatever scraps remained. Her days filled with endless chores, cooking, cleaning, fetching firewood, and by the time evening fell, she would collapse into bed, too exhausted to dream of a life beyond the one she had. Despite the hardship, Zara remained strong. Her beauty, though hidden behind those worn clothes and calloused hands, was undeniable. Her ebony skin glowed under the sun, and her quiet dignity never faltered. Even when she was mistreated, she found solace in the small moments of peace. When the house was quiet, she would take a few moments to sit by her mother's grave, whispering prayers for guidance. Zara's only comfort came from her friendship with Oyiye, a girl she had known since childhood. The two had been classmates before Zara was forced to leave school, and their bond had remained strong despite the years of separation. Oyiye, sensing the weight of Zara's burden, would often visit, bringing small tokens of kindness, a piece of bread, a few coins she had earned from selling vegetables, or an old book to remind Zara of the education she had once loved. Oyiye was not just a friend to Zara, she was a lifeline. Her visits were like rays of sunshine, breaking through the heavy clouds that seemed to hang over Zara's life. Whenever Oyiye arrived, Zara felt a sense of relief, as though for a brief moment she could breathe freely again. "You don't deserve this life, Zara," Oyiye would say, quietly, as they sat together in the shade of a tree near the compound. "You are stronger than they think. One day you'll be free of all this." Zara would smile faintly, her heart warmed by Oyiye's words, even if she could fully believe them. It was hard to imagine a life beyond the walls of Amadi's household, where her days were dictated by her stepfather's cruelty and her sister's laziness. Still, she held on to the hope that somehow things would change. Perhaps, as Oyiye always said, the gods had a plan for her, a plan that went beyond the life of the servitude she was living. In the village, tradition was everything. The people upheld their customs with unwavering loyalty, and one of the most important customs was the selection of a bride for the prince. Every few years, the gods would choose a family from which the next queen would come, and the village would gather to witness the ceremony. It was a great honor to be chosen, and every family hoped that one day the gods would favor them. This time, it was the Amadi's family's turn. The chief priest, after spending days consulting the gods and the meditation, had received a vision from the gods. The next queen of the village would come from Mr. Amadi's compound. When the news reached Mr. Amadi, he was both thrilled and proud, but only for his two daughters, Ebere and Amanda. To him, Zara was not part of the family, and he had no intention of presenting her to the prince. Began for the prince's visit, Mr. Amadi spared no expense in preparing his daughters, dressing Ebere and Amanda in the finest clothes he could afford. He ensured they were groomed to perfection, their hair adorned with beautiful beads, their face painted with delicate patterns. He saw this as his chance to elevate the status of his household, and he would not let it slip away. Zara, on the other hand, was pushed to the background. Mr. Amadi refused to include her in the preparation, insisting that she had no place in the ceremony. "You're not my real daughter," he reminded her coldly. "The prince won't want someone like you. You're better off staying out of sight." Zara's heart ached at his words, but she said nothing. She had long grown accustomed to his cruelty. Still, deep down, she couldn't help but feel a small spark of hope. What if, despite everything, the gods had chosen her? The day of the prince's visit arrived, and the entire village gathered to witness the ceremony. The palace entourage made its way to Amadi's compound with great pomp, and the prince riding at the head of the procession. He was a handsome man, tall and regal, with an air of confidence that made the villagers whisper in awe as he passed. Mr. Amadi stood proudly at the entrance of his home, ready to present Ebere and Amanda to the prince. The girls, dressed in the finest, stood nervously by his side, casting hopeful glances at the young ruler. They had spent days imagining what life as a queen would be like, what it would mean to live in the palace, to wait on hand and foot, and to rule over the village with the prince by their side. The prince, however, seemed unimpressed as Mr. Amadi introduced his daughters. The prince's gaze flickered over them with little interest. There was something in his demeanor that suggested that he was looking for something else, something deeper than the surface level beauty and charm that Ebere and Amanda presented. One of the council members noticed the prince's lack of enthusiasm, leaned in and whispered to him. "What about his first daughter?" he asked quietly. The prince raised an eyebrow. Intrigued, "His first daughter?" The council member nodded. "Yes, Zara. She's not here, but I've seen her around the village. She works hard. She works harder than anyone else. There's something about her you should see for yourself." Mr. Amadi's face darkened at the mention of Zara. He had hoped to keep her out of sight, believing that if the prince didn't see her, she wouldn't stand a chance. But now, with the prince asking for her, he had no choice. Reluctantly, he called for Zara. Zara appeared from the back of the house. She hadn't been groomed or prepared like her sisters, and she stood awkwardly, unsure of where to look. But even in her simplicity, there was a quiet beauty about her that drew the prince's attention. The prince's eyes softened as he looked at her, seeing in her something that had been missing in Ebere and Amanda: a strength of character, a dignity that no amount of finery could replicate. He smiled gently, nodding as if he had already made up his mind. "She is the one," the prince declared, his voice ringing out across the compound. Mr. Amadi's heart sank. He had done everything he could to keep Zara in the shadows, but it had all been in vain. The prince had chosen her. The announcement of Zara's selection sent shocking waves through the village. Some were surprised, others were delighted, but none more so than Zara herself. She could hardly believe what had happened. She, the neglected daughter, the one who had been treated like a servant in her old home, was now to become the queen. It felt like a dream, one she feared might slip away if she blinked too hard. In the months that followed, Zara's life changed in ways she could never have imagined. The palace sent tutors and attendants to her home to begin her training, preparing her for the role she would soon step into. She learned how to walk with grace, how to speak with authority, how to manage the affairs of the royal household. It was a transformation that left the villagers in awe. But for Zara, the journey was not an easy one. She struggled with the weight of expectations, the whispers of doubt that followed her everywhere. Her sisters, Ebere and Amanda, grew more jealous with each passing day, their resentment bubbling just beneath the surface. They mocked her behind her back, spreading rumors that she wasn't fit to be a queen. Even Mr. Amadi, though forced to accept the reality of Zara's new position, treated her with cold indifference. He made no effort to hide his bitterness, often muttering under his breath about how the gods had made a mistake. But despite the challenges, Zara remained strong. She threw herself into her training, determined to prove that she was worthy of the role the gods had chosen for her. And through it all, the prince remained by her side, offering quiet encouragement and support. As the months passed, Zara's transformation from a humble servant into the future queen became more and more evident. The palace tutors praised her intelligence and quick learning, and the village began to speak of her with admiration. People would gather at the market or by the well, whispering about how beautifully Zara carried herself, how she had become a symbol of hope and inspiration for the entire community. The villagers marveled at the girl who had once been invisible, now stepping into the role of such great importance. But for Ebere and Amanda, this shift in attention was unbearable. They had always believed that one of them would be chosen, that they would be the ones to live in the place and command the respect of the village. They had grown up thinking of themselves as special, the two daughters of Mr. Amadi, while Zara had been the outsider, the one who didn't belong. The jealousy that simmered between them began to poison their thoughts and action. Ebere, the more cunning of the two, often whispered to Amanda about how unfair it was. Can you believe it? Ebere would sneer as they watched Zara walk through the village with the palace attendant. She was nothing more than a servant, and now she thinks she's better than us. It's disgusting. Amanda, though less sharp-tongued than her sister, felt the same bitterness. It should have been one of us, she muttered, her eyes narrowing as she watched Zara from a distance. Father must be so ashamed. How can he let her take everything? Ebere's resentment grew with each passing day. She began to hatch some small schemes to undermine Zara's progress. Though she was careful not to be too obvious, she would spread rumors around the villagers, questioning Zara's worthiness. She's only pretending to be queenly, Ebere would say with a smirk. I know her better than anyone. She's just a servant playing dress-up. But no matter how much Ebere tried to tarnish Zara's reputation, the villagers saw through her jealousy. Zara's kind heart and natural grace shone through, and the more the people saw her, the more they admired her. Despite the outward appearance of success, Zara's journey was far from easy. Inside, she struggled with feeling of doubt and unworthiness. The transformation from a simple girl to a future queen was overwhelming, and Zara often found herself questioning whether she was truly capable of filling such a role. There were nights where she would lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the gods had made a mistake. She would remember the years of servitude, the harsh words of her stepfather, and the cruelty of her sisters. How could someone like her, who had been treated so poorly, rise to become a queen? The weight of those thoughts often felt too heavy to bear. Zara's only refuge during these dark moments was her friendship with Onyinye. Whenever the doubts grew too loud, Zara would seek out her friend, needing the comfort of someone who knew her heart. Onyinye's honest perspective could betray Zara's calm exterior and knew when something was troubling her. One afternoon, as they sat together under the large tree that had become their favorite meeting place, Zara finally voiced out her fears. I don't know if I can do this, Onyinye whispered. What if the gods made a mistake in choosing me? Onyinye shook her head, her expression firm but gentle. The gods don't make mistakes, Zara. They choose you for a reason. You've been through more hardship than anyone in this village, and yet you remain kind and strong. And that's what makes you worthy. Not the fancy clothes or the title, but your heart. Zara smiled faintly, though the doubt still lingered in the back of her mind. I wish I could believe that, she said softly, but sometimes it feels like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Onyinye reached out and took Zara's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You're not pretending. You've earned it. And when the time comes, you'll be a great queen, I know it. Zara nodded, though her heart remained heavy. She wanted to believe Onye's words, but the fear of failure still haunted her. Nevertheless, she resolved to keep going, to continue her training, and to prove to herself and to everyone else she was capable of becoming the queen her village needed. As Zara's star continued to rise, Mr. Amadi's resentment deepened. He had never accepted Zara as his own, and now that she was being groomed to become a queen, his bitterness grew sharper with each passing day. Though he never said it out loud, he groaned with anger whenever he saw Zara being treated with respect and admiration that in his mind should have belonged to Ebere and Amanda. He made no effort to hide his feelings from Zara. Whenever she returned to the household after her training sessions at the palace, he would find ways to belittle her. Don't think you're better than the rest of us just because the priest took you on pity. He would sneer. You're still nothing but a servant at heart. Zara never responded to his taunts. She had learned long ago that arguing with Mr. Amadi would only lead to more cruelty. Instead, she kept her head down and continued her duties. It was not in her nature to flaunt her new position, and despite the palace insistence that she focus on her royal training, Zara still helped with the chores around the house. But even her humility did nothing to soften Mr. Amadi's heart. He refused to acknowledge her efforts, instead focusing all his attention on Ebere and Amanda, who continued to whine and complain about their situation. The more they saw Zara's success, the more their jealousy fastened, and Mr. Amadi fed into their bitterness, encouraging them to view Zara as the enemy. She was only where she is because of love, Mr. Amadi would say to Ebere, his voice dropping with disdain. You are the one who should be queen. But don't worry, her time will come. The gods will see that she is not worthy, and when that happens, we'll be ready. Ebere nodded, her lips coiling into a slight smile. I'm counting on it. As the year of the brewing drew closer to its conclusion, the village buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew that the day of Zara's official engagement to the queen was approaching, and the people were eager to see how the ceremony would unfold. There was a scene of pride among the villagers, and one of their own had been chosen to be the queen, but there were whispers of uncertainties. Some of the elders were more traditional in their belief, questioning whether Zara was truly suited for the role. She's a good girl, but is she strong enough to lead? One of the leaders asked during one of the village council. The role of the queen requires more than kindness. It requires wisdom, strength, and the ability to make hard decisions, if she has it in her. Others agreed, pointing to the way Zara had handled herself during her training. She has shown more grace and patience than most women in the village. Another elder countered. She had been tested in ways none of us had imagined, and she has come through strong. The gods chose her for a reason. But the doubts lingered, and as the days of the engagement ceremony, the villagers remained divided. Some were eager to celebrate Zara's rise to power, while others watched with skepticism, waiting to see if she would falter. Zara, for her heart, felt the weight of the village expectation pressing down on her. She had spent months preparing for this, but the fear of letting everyone down gnawed at her constantly. Still, with the praises of Wavery's support and Onye's constant encouragement, she held on to the hope that she would prove herself worthy of the role she had been given. The day of Zara's engagement to the prince arrived with a sense of ceremony and importance that the village had not seen in years. The sky was clear, and the sun shone brightly, as though the gods themselves were watching over the proceedings. Villagers gathered in the square early in the morning, lining the streets that led to the palace. The air buzzed with excitement and curiosity, and children ran between the crowd, eager to catch a glimpse of the prince and his future queen. Zara woke up that morning with a mix of nerves and quiet determination. Her transformation over the past year had been profound, but as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but feel the familiar pang of doubt. The palace attendant had dressed her in a stunning gown, one made of rich fabric that shimmered in the sunlight. Her hair had been adorned with gold and beads, and her face was painted with delicate patterns that accentuated her natural beauty. But beneath it all, Zara still felt like the girl, as nothing more than a servant. Onye was with her, as she prepared her loyal friend, offering words of encouragement, as Zara took deep breaths to calm her racing heart. You look beautiful, Onye whispered, smiling warmly. The prince is going to be proud of you. We all are. Zara nodded, though her stomach was tight with nerves. I'm just afraid I'll disappoint everyone, she admitted quietly. What if I'm not enough? You are more than enough, Onyinye said firmly, taking Zara's hands in hers. You worked so hard to get here. This is your moment, Zara. Don't let anyone make you feel you don't deserve it. Zara smiled gratefully, her heart swelling with comfort of Onyinye's friendship. It was true. She had worked hard, harder than anyone could know. She had faced betrayal, jealousy, and cruelty, yet she had risen above it all. Today, she would stand before the village, not as the servant girl they once knew, but as the future queen. As the time for the ceremony approached, Zara was led through the palace corridors to the grand hall where the engagement would take place. The prince was already waiting for her, standing tall and regal at the head of the room. His eyes softened as she entered, and a gentle smile spread across his face. In that moment, Zara felt a surge of confidence. This was her path, chosen by the gods, and the prince's unwavering belief in her gave her the strength she needed to face the day. The hall was filled with noblemen, council members, and villagers who had been invited to witness the engagement. As Zara approached the prince, her heart pounded in her chest, but her steps were steady and sure. The chief priest, dressed in his ceremonial robes, stood before them, ready to officiate the engagement according to the sacred tradition of their village. The ceremony began with a prayer to their gods, thanking them for their guidance and asking for their continued blessing over the union. The chief priest spoke in a deep, commanding voice, his words echoing through the wall as he recounted the divine vision that had led to Zara's selection as queen. The gods have chosen wisely, the priest declared, his eyes sweeping over the gathered crowd. Zara has shown strength, humility, and grace. She has proven herself worthy of this great responsibility, and the gods will bless this union as they bless our village. Zara listened intently, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. She had doubted herself so many times, but hearing the praised words gave her a sense of peace she hadn't felt before. This was her destiny, and she would embrace it fully. The prince stepped forward, then his gaze never leaving Zara. He reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. Zara, he began, his voice steady but full of affection. From the moment I saw you, I knew there was something special about you. You have shown more strength and resilience than anyone I have ever known, and it is an honor to stand by your side. Together, we will lead this village with wisdom and compassion. I promise to support you, to protect you, and to cherish you as my queen. The crowd watched in awe as the prince spoke, his words filled with sincerity and devotion. Zara felt tears pricked at the corner of her eyes, overwhelmed by the emotions of the moment. This was not just a formal engagement. This was a promise, a vow of love and partnership, and would define the rest of her life. Just as the ceremony was drawing to a close, a murmur spread through the crowd. Zara noticed a palace attendant rushing forward. The chief priest, his expression troubled. The priest leaned down to listen. Attendant whispered something in his ear. A moment later, the priest's face paled. He raised a hand, signaling for silence, and the room fell still. There is an urgent matter, the priest said, his voice tense, one that must be addressed immediately. The crowd shifted uncomfortable as the tension in the room grew. Zara's heart began to race again. A deep sense of dread settled in her chest. What could have happened? The chief priest turned towards the royal family, his expression grave. It has come to our attention that Zara is with child. Gasps echoed through the hall. Zara's mind went blank. How could this be? She had never been with any man, and yet the priest's words hung in the air like a heavy weight. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her, judging, questioning, doubting. The joy of the moment had been shattered, replaced by shock and confusion. The prince stood frozen before her, his face a mark of disbelief. This can't be true, Zara whispered, shaking her head as tears filled her eyes. I haven't. I don't understand. The chief priest's voice was stern but compassionate. Zara, You will be given a chance to explain yourself. But for now, this engagement cannot continue. We must seek the guidance of the gods to understand what has happened." The crowd erupted into whispers and murmur. The excitement of the engagement replaced by scandal and uncertainty. Zara's world had been turned upside down. In an instant, the joy she had felt just moments before was gone, replaced by fear and confusion. In the days that followed, Zara was subjected to a trial by the village elders. Accusations flew from all directions, and the once supportive community now seemed to turn against her. The elders demanded answers, but Zara had none to give. She had no memory of being with anyone, no explanation for the pregnancy that now defined her future. Mr. Amadi, seizing the opportunity, was quick to cast blame on Zara. He publicly declared that this was the proof of what he had always believed, that Zara was unworthy, a disgrace to the family. "I warned you all," he spat in the village square, his voice loud and venomous. "She is nothing but trouble, just like her mother." This is her true nature. The villagers who had once looked upon Zara with admiration now whispered behind her back, casting suspicion glances whenever she passed. Even some of the palace attendants began to treat her differently, unsure of what to believe. The weight of the judgment pressed heavy on Zara's heart, but through it all, she remained steadfast in her truth. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but proving her innocence seemed impossible. The prince, though devastated by the news, refused to abandon Zara. He stood by her side, defending her honor, even when the whispers grew louder. "We will find the truth," he promised her one evening, as they sat together in the quiet of the palace gardens. "No matter what happens, I believe in you." Zara clung to his words, drawing strength from his support. But the path ahead was uncertain, and the trials were far from over. Comment below for part 2.
Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please click on the subscribe button to support us, turn on the post notification to get notified when I upload a new story, like, share, and comment your thoughts. Till then, bye!